one of the blogs that we work with here at Scared Monkeys, of course, is Blink on Crime. You know, the website at blinkoncrime.com. Blink is here to talk about a new case, and I'm always amazed and impressed with the good work that they do over there. And the Christine Sheddy case is one that has several parts to it. There's a YouTube video, and it's an important case that the mainstream media, for some reason, isn't picking up, but of course our friend Blink has. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Dana. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Tell us about Christine Sheddy.
Well, you know, Dana, this is one of these cases that, you know, they all pull at your heartstrings, but there's so many facets to it. She was a 26-year-old woman, a mother of three, in what I would characterize as an abusive long-term relationship. You know, the old story of the guy that's always going to change and it's always going to get better, and a young woman that, you know, has two very small children and, you know, not a lot of options. And it's horrible to see, but how this particular woman was really victimized by the, I'll call him a gentleman, that she had two children with. But it, not just that, it is a woman that, in our opinion, having, you know, spent significant amount of time and research on this case, that we believe was victimized when she went missing on November 13th, 2007, out of a town called Pocomoke City, which is in Maryland, just across the border, really, from Delaware.
Now, this, you know, I'm just looking at the story, and I've read it over and watched the YouTube video, and again, I commend you for the good work that you've done. This character, Levi, I think you're being very polite by saying gentleman. Let's talk about him a bit.
That is the boy's father, Zeke and Isaac. And when I say father, I'm again being polite because he spent very little time with him. He gave her absolutely no financial or any other kind of support for these adorable little guys. Didn't really keep a job. And I've had exclusive access to Christine's personal accounts and emails and MySpace, which her mother, Lynn Dodenhoff, entrusted me, which in itself is amazing. If you look at the contrast between Lynn and, I hate to say it, but Cindy Anthony, instead of Cindy's approach, which was, no, my child never did anything wrong, she was perfect, and, you know, it's somebody else, Lynn came to me and said, and I'll never forget it, we've grown pretty close, and she said, you know, she made a lot. She had a self-esteem issue. She probably made some bad choices. But let me tell you this: she loved those children more than anything in the world, and she loved Levi. And in one way or another, that ended up taking her life. She never would have left those children, and that's what it's really about. She has three children that were told that their mother left them, and as you can see on our site, I just can't think of anything cooler for a child to have to grow up like that. Yeah,
exactly. And the big difference between Anthony in this case is someone is wanting answers now and will, you know, accept the facts as they come forward. Why wouldn't the media pick up on this story? It's fascinating.
I think there's a few reasons. A couple of them are the underbelly, if you will, in this community that was the fringe that Christine had been introduced to by Levi, also through Levi's cousin Steve Hall, who he had lived with on and on. They're just when I say they're a mess, I mean they're all felons. They've all got, in that jurisdiction, what's called peace orders, the equivalent of a restraining order.
Right.
They've all got, you know, babies. One gentleman has 7 or 8 children, I think, with somebody. Nobody's got a steady job. And I don't believe, and as I said, I've had exclusive access, I don't believe Christine ever knew that about any of these people. I think Levi introduced her to this group, a guy by the name of, his name is Clarence Jackson, nickname is Junior, and his girlfriend, Tia Johnson, lived in this farmhouse. So it's got about 67 acres on it. These people were unwanted themselves in that community. Their first order of business when they got down there was they ripped the tin off of this chicken farm, these chicken houses, and burned the chicken houses to the ground. They stole laptop and cell phone from the neighbor, of which Junior was arrested for. They were in the property from about September 2007 till a week after Christine went missing, and it was truly, truly hell for the neighbors that were living near them, so much so that they actually ended up getting a security guard at night and a security camera, which was motion activated. So on a positive note, we can say unequivocally who was at that property, who came and left the evening of November 12th and the following day of November 13th, which are the dates in question. And to your question about why the mainstream media didn't cover it, I just think it was so sad. And right away, one of the radio stations, which had a blog, WGMD, that was covering it locally, nobody knew this, but the mother of Levi Hall, Joyce Hall, was an employee.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Exactly. So, and nobody knew that until Lynn Dodenhoff, Christine's mom, did a radio interview and mentioned her by name. So imagine that follow-up meeting in HR.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that there was a lot of belief on behalf of law enforcement. The mayor and lead detective at the time did not believe that Christine went missing from suspicious means or foul play. He believed one of three stories that this Junior Jackson said, that they had come back from picking up their children and Christine was gone. She left her two kids there,
yeah.
her clothing, she didn't leave with anything, and that was the story that was believed.
Yeah, well, that sounds crazy to me. Blink from Blink on Crime is here. Let's talk a little bit about the relationship between Christine and Levi. How did she meet him?
She actually met him through his brother Stan, who is another character. He actually was convicted of beating up an 80-year-old woman while stealing her purse in the Rehoboth area. And they were, I believe, a little bit of what I'll call tween friends, maybe 14, 50, had dated maybe once or twice, but nothing certainly serious. It was just friendly, and that's how she ended up meeting Levi. And from there, they were inseparable. When I say inseparable, I mean not necessarily in proximity, because there were, occasions where they would, be apart for a while. But as I said, as I'm going through and I'm looking at her, her personal correspondence and email, she was a victim. She loved him in the purest of ways, in the most naive of ways. But as I read this information and as I see this individual, it's almost in a predatory way.
Right.
And if you've ever interviewed anybody that's a victim of abuse, which I know you have, in these situations, these guys are phenomenal at it. They have a pattern. It's abuse, and then there's like a honeymoon period after that where, you get this individual back into the swing of thinking, well, maybe they could change. Maybe it was a one-time making them needy, if you will. And I'm seeing this in black and white in her background, and it is heartbreaking. I don't think I'll ever understand why sometimes that happens, because it hasn't happened to me personally, although I can say there's a lot of women that it does happen to. But it would be really great if in all of this, maybe we can break that cycle by conveying, educating and conveying these messages.
Well, the cycle of violence is something that's been going on.
They don't change. They're not, the reality is, in general, if a man hits you or beats you or, verbally abuses you, it's not going to get better. No, it doesn't. And it takes a lot for it to even get under control. It never does get better.